Hello and welcome back to the Kalopsia podcast. I'm your host Sydney, and I'm thrilled that you guys clicked on this week's episode, which is going to be on something a little bit different, which is politics and information and how we are getting that. So I would like to preface this episode by saying that I am here to admit a fault of my own, if I'm being honest. I am coming here with my tail between my legs, not quite, but it's between them, not quite under the belly area. I'm getting way too detailed into this metaphor. But, I'm here to admit that I am part of the problem that I want to discuss today. And so I have always said, as a baseline, as the type of person that I am, I don't read the news, I don't watch the news, I let the news come to me. And that system worked for me. It worked for me for a while. It was kind of like the way that I could kind of filter the bad in the world and, the bad in my world, in my own life. I'm thinking I've got enough going on just in my little bubble. I don't want to be ultra aware of everything that's happening around me all over the world. And a lot of the time, what I really do need to know about, does come to me. And I do value social media for that reason. And there are so many ways to access information through infographics on Instagram, even TikTok. You've got reporters. There's a lot of ways that you can stumble upon news. And when it comes to the grand scheme of things, I do believe in that. Because at the end of the day, it's not normal for us as individuals to have access to all of this conflict, all of this, destruction that's happening all over the world. It's not normal for us to be aware of what's happening in Georgia, the state and the country, and also know what's going on in Australia and Antarctica, but also what will happen in the school right next door to me. It's not normal to have that much access to information. We all know this. This is not a new idea. And so I kind of took that and I'm thinking, it's not normal for me to have all this information. So, I really should just loosen the reins and just kind of allow what needs to come to me, come to me. And like I said, this system did work for me. I knew about Black Lives Matter. I know about the Gaza conflict, the genocide, I really should say. I know about, the laws, the executive orders. I know a lot of stuff. I know a lot of stuff that's happening, but I don't know the nitty-gritty. I don't know which politicians to pay attention to. I don't know which law in particular is going to affect me in particular, or what might affect the person next to me. I don't know the details because I'm not doing the research. And so this kind of concept came up to me because I went to the hands-off protest in Boston this past weekend. And I had a lot of anxiety going into it. I had so much anxiety to the point where I was really concerned. I was thinking so deeply into it because I'm hearing a lot of things about people getting snatched off the streets. There was a tough student that just got kidnapped essentially and was deported. She was a PhD student at Tufts University, just because she went to a protest, and during Ramadan they just snatched her off the streets, right? So I'm thinking I need to be concerned. And, I have my roommate telling me, we need to wear nondescript clothing. I'm thinking, I have an afro. That's my baseline. How many people in Boston are walking around with afros? I'm thinking it's got to be sub 1,000, right? So I'm thinking this is going to point me apart. So I was like, I need to slick back my hair. I need to wear black on black. This jacket's got some sort of writing on it. I was thinking so deeply into it. I was so anxious. I end up going. And I'm so thankful to have gone. I feel like I've gone to multiple protests in the past, but I have to admit that the game has changed. Protesting for an Earth Day march and a women's march is not going to be the same. Even a Black Lives Matter march pre-COVID or during COVID, right post-COVID, I think I went. And what protesting is today is very different, especially because of who is in office, right? So I was very aware of my lack of security in my stance, right? There are people who are actually pushing against what I am fighting for. And so that's kind of what I was understanding. But once I got there, I understood I had made the right decision. There were elderly, there were children, there were 15,000 people that showed up. This protest on April 5th did not even only include Boston. It was all over the country and outside of the country. Do you know how bad something has to be for other countries to become involved concerning? And so I go to the protest. I am happy to be there. I'm getting emotional. I'm actually getting emotional. I'm thinking, wow, this many people have moved themselves to get here. And how beautiful is that? But then we got to the speeches, and that's when I really started thinking. I really started thinking because they started discussing the fact that showing up on that day was step one. That's not where the action ends. And I feel like in my youth, I'm still in my youth, but when I was younger, when I thought of protesting, I was thinking, okay, I show up today and this is already making such a difference and it's going to help this movement. And in a way it does. It shows that the quantity of people who want to show up, it shows the mass, seeing that amount of people fighting for a specific cause is going to tell, society something. But that's not where it needs to end, right? When they started the speeches and discussing all of these laws and implications and how it will affect our communities, I started to understand that protesting is the first step, but what we really need to do is focus on local politics. We need to pour this energy that we put into making our signs, this energy that we put into, sharing these posts on Instagram and posting about these, events that we attend. We need to put that energy also towards signing up for, programs that are going to help foster new support systems for groups that are marginalized. Maybe we need to focus more on putting a specific person into office that we know is going to fight for a specific cause once given that power. I didn't consider when I was thinking I'll let the news come to me, the detriment that I was putting on my local politics and thus my national politics. If we each stay at home and think to ourselves, there's too much destruction going on out there and, I can't really pay attention to this, maybe I'll just let what needs to come to me. And, I'm speaking for myself here, obviously, then what is going to happen to all of the local politicians trying to get the word out, trying to get people to come behind them so that they can then maybe hold sway once they climb the ladder? If all of us are choosing to turn the cheek to what's happening right outside of our doorstep, nothing's going to change. And it's really disappointing to come to this realization of myself and think, wow, I might have actually been doing more harm than good by trying to protect my peace in a way. And I do think that watching the news is often more harmful than it is good, especially when you're looking at different news outlets portraying the same thing in different ways. For example, I was listening to the Emergency Intercom podcast, a podcast that I've dabbled in over the past year. I don't listen religiously, but I know that these two people are friends with two other creators that I really love on the platform on YouTube. And, I was like, what, let me just start listening to them. And this particular episode, Enya says something about how, Greta Thunberg fell off. She said, Greta Thunberg fell off. She just, who even talks about her anymore? And then they were saying, that bitch, they were calling her a bitch. They were like, wow, that bitch, she fell off. Who even hears about her anymore? And then I was like, you know what? I haven't heard about my girl, Greta in a long time. Let me just do a quick Google search. Let me just type in her name, Greta Thunberg. I look her up. The first article that I look up, the first one, right? It talks about how, Greta Thunberg has become so violent in her way of portraying, of taking a stance. Oh, no, this is actually what they were saying. They were saying that, Greta has been accused or has been shown fighting for a cause that really doesn't have anything to do with her stance on environmental issues, Well, her current actions seem to stray from her initial goal and seem to be drawing attention from environmental issues. And what is she drawing attention to and away from environmental issues about, right? Did that sentence make sense? She is straying from environmental issues to talk about the genocide in Gaza, in Palestine, right? And they're saying that she is straying and saying, what does this have to do with environmental issues, right? So already we're seeing that the first news outlet that I'm looking up, Greta Thunberg, is already using very subjective language to describe what Greta Thunberg is doing, which is fighting for Palestine, right? And then a person without critical thinking is going to be like, okay, I'm going to read that and think, right, what does that have to do with environmental issues? But no, let's dive a little bit deeper. Let's open 2 more websites, the second one and the third one on the list. And now we're going to understand, we're going to see the bigger picture and see that, okay, actually the news outlets, the biggest news outlets, the newspapers, all of them have stopped reporting on Greta Thunberg because of her stance on Palestine, because she's fighting for Palestine. Because of that, they have stopped reporting her altogether. And what does that say about our news outlets? What does that say about the people who we trust to give us the most important information? And beyond that, what does that say about us? If our idolized podcasters that we all listen to, right, are saying, she fell off. They didn't even think to search her up. And even myself as a non-news person thought to look it up. Let's just look it up. Let's just look up her name, right? And then so much will come up on TikTok. Look her up on TikTok. This is one of the reasons why I really do love TikTok as a news outlet. Which you might find problematic. But I feel like the people on TikTok are honest, and that's why a lot of people are afraid of TikTok. I listen to a lot of creators who say, my TikTok people, like, they hate me, like, they actually hate me. On YouTube, everybody's nice to me. On TikTok, they hate me. And that's because people on TikTok are brutally honest, and they do not care. They have no filter, and you're gonna get all sides of the polarizing thoughts. You're gonna be people who are supporting this whole Enya and Drew situation, people who are totally against it, people who are just totally talking about a separate issue. But now I digress. I looked up Greta Thunberg on TikTok. What comes up? It's an edit of how she is getting carried away. The video is solely on her feet. She's getting carried away from a peaceful protesting against what Israel is doing. And that was the video. It's just showing that. And people are saying, wow, to think that people are just saying she fell off, she disappeared, nobody's talking about her. Why is nobody talking about that? Why is nobody talking about her? Why has the attention been pulled from her? People are so comfortable talking about environmental events, talking about our gas emissions, talking about how to save the environment. But once you start talking about the Israel-Palestine conflict, ooh, everybody shuts up. Oh, let's censor. Ooh. Let's not talk about that. Let's be quiet. I don't even know why I brought that up, but I'm still so frustrated about it. I was saying, what? Did they really say that? Did they really say that? I had to pause it and go to the comments. I was like, did they really just say? I was so gobsmacked. But the lesson here, right, is that we need to be doing our own research. And I'm saying this so wholeheartedly. Don't trust the CNN, Fox News, all of this, because they're going to regurgitate the same news that they all have agreed that they're allowed to talk about and present it to you in a slightly variated form to then, say, okay, this is what you should know. This is what you should care about. Right? I think that we need to go even further. Think about what we did in social studies, way back when in 7th grade. What are you going to do? You're going to look up this issue, or let's say it's an executive order that we're wanting to discuss, we're wanting to research. Let's go into that executive order. What's the history of that order? Who brought it forth? What was the issues? What was the argument? What was the counter argument? We need to bring back our critical thinking and not trust everything that comes our way. Another thing that I think is really important to note here that I learned when I went to this protest was that is cynicism expediting our downfall. When I go to these protests, when I go to these events, right? And when I repost these, infographics on social media, a lot of my mentality, I'm speaking for myself here, I can only speak for myself, is almost one of anger. It's one of anger. And I once read a Shonda Byrne book. I think it was called The Magic, the one on gratitude, or it might have been The Secret, actually, which is about the law of attraction. And in one of these books, she had talked about how when it comes to global issues, global conflict, when it comes to such destruction like we're seeing right now, the book was saying that we need to focus less on what we are angry about and focus more on what we are searching for. Because the law of attraction dictates that whatever you put your energy towards is what is going to be multiplied. Even if you're saying, I don't want to lose my job, and you think that to yourself, I don't want to lose my job, I don't want to lose my job, I don't want to lose my job, you're going to manifest losing your job, because at the bottom line, you're saying the words, lose my job, lose my job, lose my job. So that's what you're saying to yourself. So that's what you're going to manifest for yourself. So once you're saying this with the whole issue of, let's say world hunger is, I'm just going to bring that as a random issue, right? And you're thinking to yourself, or as a mass, right? We're fighting, we're saying, end world hunger, end world hunger, end world hunger. What we are saying in the mentality of this book, right, is we're saying the words world hunger, world hunger, world hunger constantly. And what they were saying was that we need to focus more so on, abundance of food, abundance of shelter, abundance, like that's how we should be protesting, that's how we should be discussing the issue, is from the standpoint of what we want to bring forth. And I read that and I was like, okay, great in theory, love that. But, how are we really gonna convince the masses to think more positively when there is such destruction in front of our eyes? I was like, I love this idea, I really do, but it's just not realistic, is it? Now, when I went to the protest, I was thinking, okay, we're all here, we're all gathered. I was like, how beautiful is it that all of us are here to fight for the same cause? How beautiful is it that so many of us thought the same way and wanted to come forth and take a stance? Because silence is also a stance. So we took a stance. And the conversations, the speeches were more so focused on the idea of hope. And I realized then and there, wow, I haven't even thought of the word hope in months. And how insane is that? Why isn't hope in the regular grammar of what we are discussing here today? Why aren't we hoping for, I hope that this may change. I hope that we may come together. I hope that this person may come forth and fight for this cause. Hope altogether became foreign to me. Hope as a concept became foreign to me. And that's when I realized how big of a cynic I had become. Because also, something that I had been saying often, and I'm catching myself now, was that the sooner that it all comes crashing down, the sooner that we can rebuild. And what I'm saying in that sentence is that the sooner that catastrophe comes, the sooner we can rebuild. So I am manifesting catastrophe. What happened to hope? And I'm saying, I preface this episode by saying I'm part of the problem. I am part of the problem, but the first step is awareness, you guys. And if one of you listening is similar to me, maybe we can change our mindset here. Because we need to lean on hope. We need to cling to our hope. We need to focus on the positives. Who out here has come out of the ashes, thinking, this is happening, so this inspired me to fight for this cause, and now I want to rally the troops. Let's, fight for this cause. Let's try to get a bunch of signatures. And it starts at the local level. But I don't want to impart, what my sources are. Everybody needs to do their own research. And that was also something that knocked me across the head a couple months back. I was sat here in this very room with my friends, actually, and my friend Aaliyah, she was like, well, that's why we have to do our own research. I was like, wait, you got me there. You got me there. You literally got me there. But the bottom line is that our cynicism is going to expedite our downfall. Thinking to ourselves, we're fucked. Thinking to ourselves, we have no hope. Thinking to ourselves, we're losing our rights. Thinking to ourselves, we have a dictator. Thinking to ourselves, all of these different types of things, cynic thoughts, which might be true, in certain lights, is going to expedite our downfall. And so how can we tread back? How can we find our hope? And it starts local. That's what I think. But I'll check back in with you guys in a few months' time. This new mindset, this new way of thinking, this newfound appreciation for research and for education in the political side, it's new to me. And I will check back in with what I learned. But I also feel like just the LA fires and seeing how many creators online. I was just watching a Claudia Sulewski February recap video, and she was showing her and her friends, volunteering to wrap up some packages for the forest fires, for the people who were displaced and people who lost their belongings. And I was thinking, that's also where hope is fostered, through action. And it's not rocket science to think, okay, the more that I do, the better I feel, the more I want to give, and the more I want to contribute. And the more that we do that, the more momentum we're going to build, and we might end up in a different place than we even ever thought possible. I don't know if that made any sense towards the end there, but I think that's all I have for you guys today. But let this be a lesson that it's okay to be wrong. In fact, it's great to be wrong. Every time I realize I've made a mistake, I am not thrilled, but I am thankful. I am thankful to learn when I've made a mistake, because that means that I can go forth not making that same mistake again. And a few months back, I did an episode with this secret agent. I'm forgetting her name now, but it was an interview. And in it, she said that Americans in particular actually diminish their wrongs more so than any other, country. In America in particular, I think, don't quote me on this, I think she was saying that we look at our positives and inflate them, and we're like, wow, I really did good today, like that was really great, I did so good. But when we look at our wrongs, we're like, oh, I was having a bad day, maybe I'll just try not to do that next time, and we diminish our faults. But we need to look at our faults concretely, objectively, and think to ourselves, okay, this is a fault of mine, and it has impacts. My way of thinking may impact how my friends may think of things as well, and that can be exacerbated and rippled forth. Maybe I need to fix this fault and really look at myself and think, do I want to move forward with this fault, or do I want to change it? And here I am today to tell you I'm trying to change my fault. My fault being my choice to ignorance. My choice to remain in ignorance, because ignorance is bliss, but it can't be bliss when your ignorance fuels misinformation and silence, which in itself is a passive stance. Okay, I think that's all I have for you guys today. If this isn't your speed, my topics don't usually go politically, but I thought it was important. I thought it was important to discuss. And at the end of the day, this podcast is lessons that I learned, and this is a lesson that I have learned. And it can maybe help anybody else who might be thinking similarly to me. And it's important for us to educate ourselves. It's important for us to be aware and not inadvertently become sheep into fueling a system that is meant to tear us apart and tear us down. And so I'll leave you guys with that. That's all I've got for you guys today. I hope you enjoyed. I will see you guys next week. Don't forget to reach out. Let me know your thoughts. Let me know your thoughts at kalopsiapod, KALOPSIAPOD on Instagram and TikTok, and at SYDNEYDJOTITA on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. And I hope you enjoyed once again. And I will see you guys next week. Bye.